It's easy to forget just how stuck in the mud Resident Evil was as a franchise not too long ago. It was in 2012 precisely when the more action-orientated 6th mainline installment launched on PS3 that any longtime fan believed that the zombie chomps had forever killed off Capcom's iconic series for good, calling into question whether or not Resident Evil would ever try and return to true survival horror ever again. Slowly but surely though, things began to look up, with the Revelation series of spin-off titles feeling a lot more akin to something like Resident Evil 4, even if the woefully misjudged Umbrella Corps, which I still refuse to speak about, followed soon after. However, it would appear that Capcom had taken note on player feedback, as it would go on to release what I consider one of the best series entries yet, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. The excitement for Resident Evil 7 first began roughly around about 2016 when that eerily creepy kitchen demo for PlayStation VR started making the rounds during the convention circuit. Like many people, I just assumed that this was another demo designed to specifically show off the benefits of this strangely new format. But little did we know that what we just saw would eventually turn out to be an official tone piece for what would later become known as Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Hi everyone, it's Aaron here from Push Square, and rather astonishingly, Resident Evil 7 turned 5 years old yesterday, and even the equally as fantastic Resident Evil 2 remake turns 3 today. Time is moving way too fast, I agree, but anyway, I thought I'd use this momentous occasion to tell you a little bit about why I think Resident Evil 7 remains one of the finest first-person horror games ever made. What makes Resident Evil 7 Biohazard still scary to this day is just how effectively it uses the first-person perspective to set in a more claustrophobic brand of horror. This sharp change of camera style was something that most of us were unsure about heading into Biohazard's release, yet it didn't take long, pretty much by the time that your girlfriend Mia was seen clambering up the stairs on all fours to be exact, for people to realise, okay, yes, Resident Evil, as we remember it, is well and truly back. And while it's true that Biohazard owes a great debt to 70s slasher cinema, it smartly uses the cut-off Louisiana bayou setting to make poor Ethan Winters feel truly isolated. Not to mention that it took a lot of bravery on Capcom's part to cast you as a totally new character for this full-fledged Resident Evil game. Is Ethan the most interesting or even capable guy to find himself going up against a seemingly immortal family of psychos? Probably not. But this ordinariness worked wonders in terms of making Ethan a cipher in which players could plant their own mindset on. For once, we weren't super army man Chris Redfield or even cool badass ex-cop Leon S. Kennedy. You were just an ordinary guy fighting for his life in the most extraordinary of circumstances. Sure, we can all laugh at the idea of a man trying to pour on some magic water on his hand in order to restore it, but way back then it didn't in any way lessen the scares. Getting to explore a creepy environment like the Baker family home only helped add to that, and is in large part a major reason for this new era of Resident Evil that we're currently in. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard still feels like a breath of fresh air within the wider scope of the series, even now, 5 years on, because despite very much sliding into a familiar world and the wider Resident Evil canon, it still manages to feel surprisingly standalone when played isolated. Sure, you get pretty boy Chris Redfield arriving at the end in order to tie things up, but for the most part the game firmly swerves into soft reboot territory. Suddenly, there's no Umbrella Corporation, no wider bioterrorist plot, there aren't even traditional zombies in sight. Instead, everything feels new and fresh, with you continuously caught off guard with whatever unexpectedly spooky surprises lurk around every corner. Some of the scariest moments found in Resident Evil 7 Biohazard include a grudge like Mia clambering up the staircase, as already mentioned, Jack Baker constantly chasing you Nemesis style throughout the mansion, and then taking on Marguerite's giant tree-like creature form within the confines of an abandoned greenhouse. Whew, scary stuff. What's best about these various encounters is that it plays to the game's inherent intimate strengths. Whereas Resident Evil 6 was epic in scope, This did unfortunately also mean that the threats became, well, less threatening. This never happens in Resident Evil 7, however, and the entire experience is so much better for it. Admittedly, as is often the case with most Resident Evil games, Biohazard unfortunately falls into the trap of leaning into the series' more action-orientated exploits by the time you reach its end. Still though, this does nothing to take away from the innate horror found in the early hours of the game, whether you spend it dodging leaky sludge people and taking part in Lucas Baker's weird games that feel like they're directly ripped straight out of a Saw movie. Were Capcom not brave enough to reset the format with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, there's absolutely no way we would have received Resident Evil Village, my personal game of 2021, which released last year. Simply put, Biohazard walked so that Village could run, and even though there's a purity in the first game that even I can admit the direct Ethan Winters sequel often lacks, both games helped to solidify a strong survival horror direction for the franchise going forward. It was only a couple of years ago that the thought of completely taking away your weapons in a Resident Evil game seemed absolutely absurd. However, both Resident Evil Village and Biohazard do this countless times in order to keep you on the back foot, with Capcom tapping into the perfect blend of Western meets Eastern style scares to make for a fresher survival horror take, more so than what we'd ever seen before. That's why, while I personally feel that Village is just about the superior first-person Resident Evil, ever so slightly, 5 years on, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard remains one of the best survival horror games out there. And that, my friends, is no easy feat. So there you have it guys, in terms of my thoughts about why Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, 5 years on, still remains one of the best modern horror games out there, and is indeed, if you're a big fan of scares, it very much deserves your attention. And remember, if you're a PlayStation Plus member, you technically already own it because Resident Evil 7 is right there as part of the PlayStation Plus collection, so make sure you take advantage. Anyway guys, as always, I want to thank you for watching the video. If you have played Resident Evil 7 and you plan on potentially having a replay, seeing as we've just hit this anniversary, let me know in the comment section below. But anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave it a like and consider subscribing to the Push Square YouTube channel for everything else PlayStation related. Until next time, thank you as ever for watching, and I will most definitely see you in the next one.